So, as you know, we have this new piece of software called Shul Cloud, which it took us a while to get it up and running, but as far as I know, I think most people find it useful. One of the things that it does is generate the list of honors, and so you've got. And for the sake of completeness, I got a letter on Shul Cloud or an email saying you have been offered the honor of Rabbi Sermon. Do you accept it? And I asked Charlotte, who's not only the head of tech committee, but also senior vice president and therefore the person who evaluates me, does this mean I have the ability to decline? And she said no, which is fine with me because now any complaints about my sermon are her fault and not mine, because I offered to decline. Rabbi Yochanan Bar Napacha lived in Eretz Israel in the 3rd century BCE. He was reportedly so good looking that it was almost impossible to imagine. They said if you wanted even an approximation of his beauty, you would need to take a silver goblet as it emerges from the crucible, fill it with seeds of red pomegranate, encircle its brim with a wreath of red roses, and set it between the sun and the shade. The glow from such a work would approximate the good looks of Rabbi Yochanan. Shimon ben Lakish lived at the same time. While he had studied Torah in his youth, hard times caused him to leave the yeshiva and become a bandit and a gladiator. One day he went down to the river to bathe, and Rabbi Yochanan was there at the same time. Yochanan looked at Shimon and said to him, "Strength like yours should be given to Torah." Shimon replied, "And looks like yours should be given to a woman." Rabbi Yochanan recognized an intelligent and witty guy when he saw one and said, "I have a sister who is even more good looking than me. If you study Torah with me, I will give her to you in marriage." Shimon agreed and is better known by his Talmudic name Rosh Lakish, i.e. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yochanan were study partners, brothers-in-law, and inseparable friends. Until one day when they disagreed in the yeshiva about when a weapon could become ritually impure. They both agreed that it was when the manufacturing process came to an end. But when was that? The teacher, Rabbi Yochanan, ruled when they are tempered in a furnace. The student, Rosh Lakish, countered when they have been cooled by the water. Rabbi Yochanan said sarcastically, "A criminal understands his trade better than I." Rosh Lakish was devastated. Responding out of hurt with the same wit he used at their initial meeting, he snapped, "What good have you done me? When I was with the circus gang, they called me master, and now I have the same title." Insulted, Rabbi Yochanan retorted, "But I brought you under the wings of the Shekhinah. I brought you under the wings of God's presence." And he turned away in anger. And the two never spoke again. Rosh Lakish was so devastated by their estrangement that he took ill. Rosh Lakish's wife, who was of course Rabbi Yochanan's sister, pleaded with her brother to reconcile with her husband, but he refused. Rosh Lakish soon died. I first learned about this Talmudic story about 25 years ago when Rabbi Jack Moline of Alexandria, Virginia, did a sermon seminar for the Eastern Pennsylvania region of the Rabbinical Assembly, of which I was then president. Rabbi Moline connected this Talmudic story to his own life. He had a close friend from high school and college who did something that Rabbi Moline considered morally repugnant. He never told us exactly what, and he dropped him as a friend. Whenever the friend would call, he would rush him off the phone, and when his friend wanted to get together, he always came up with some excuse. Sometime later, this now ex-friend passed away, never having been told why the friendship ended. Rabbi Moline used this to urge his congregants to reconnect with someone in their life, a relative or a friend or someone else with whom they had lost contact. Rabbi Moline's sermon at the time reminded me of a similar situation in my life. Someone who I too lost touch with, someone whose phone calls I never returned until she was killed in an accident and her parents called me to officiate at her funeral. Like Rabbi Moline, I never told that friend why I had become estranged, and I never had the opportunity to repair the estrangement. One of my favorite movies of all time is Field of Dreams, and I suspect this is true of a lot of men who are about my age. I don't want to ruin it for you if you've never seen it, but I've watched it probably a dozen times or more. And when the lead character, Ray Kinsella, played by Kevin Costner, has a game of catch with his dad, I always cry. It may not be true of every man, but I do think that a large percentage of men, after losing their fathers, wish they had had a better relationship with them than they did. And it is clearly no accident that the lead character in the movie has the same last name as the author of the book on which it was based. When we lose someone whom we loved, but with whom we had a less than ideal relationship, we mourn twice. We mourn for the person we lost and the relationship we had with them, and we mourn for the relationship we didn't have with them, and which now will never be repaired, unless perhaps your father walks through an Iowa cornfield to play catch with you some decades after his death. My dad retired at age 65 and he died at 92. And for all but the last few months of his life, he was generally in good health. And I want to add that totally by chance, today is the last day of the 11 months of staying cottage for my dad. So kind of a top of everything else, an emotional day. But as I said, my dad for the last 27 years of his life was retired and in pretty good health, which meant, among other things, that he had a lot of time on his hands. And I don't think he ever realized how busy a pulpit rabbi can be, especially around the fall holidays or Pesach. So it was not uncommon for me to call my dad and be greeted by the following sentence. You finally remembered that you have a father. All of us have weak spots and buttons that are easily pushed. I tend not to handle criticism very well. My dad's desire to be called more frequently than I often did ran right up against my desire to avoid criticism. And on more than one occasion, I decided that if I was going to get fussed at when I called him, I wouldn't call him at all. And this might go on for several weeks until my stepfather would phone me and ask me to speak with my dad. When I visited my dad for Father's Day in June, it became clear to me that he was probably in the last few months of his life. So I made a commitment to call him more regularly, to visit him in New York as frequently as I could, and to not get upset if he made a snarky comment about the frequency of my calls. I fell into a rhythm of calling him every 2 or 3 days at least, and for sure every Friday afternoon after I finished work before I got ready for Kehilat Shalom. A few weeks before he died, my stepmother said that my dad was so happy. I feel as if I have my son back. I miss that rhythm of calling him on Friday afternoons now that he's gone. When we know that someone we love is dying, we treat them better. When someone from whom we have become estranged is dying, we try to mend the breach. One of the things that the days of awe try to do is remind us that one day we're going to die. Whether you buy into the traditional theology of the Unatana Tokef or not, whether you believe that God literally decides your fate on Rosh Hashanah and seals it on Yom Kippur, every day that we live brings us a day closer to our eventual passing. When I realized that my dad was going to die within a few months or so, I realized that if I was going to try and fix my relationship with him, I had better do it soon. The chances are that there is someone in your life or who was once in your life with whom your relationship is not what it once was and not what it could be. When Rosh Hashanah is over, pick up the phone or send that text or send that email. May this Rosh Hashanah serve as the opportunity to fix the broken relationships in our lives. Our relationship with God, to be certain, but also our relationships with each other. Amen. Amen.